we already found out more than 1,200,000,000 hryvnias of losses. Crimes is trying to kind of return us a few dozens of years. You are mentioning the hardest numbers of those who died, of those who were tortured, of those who became people with disability and they had hard physical injuries. Enterprises has no opportunity to work on agricultural activity.
Hello and welcome to Ukrainian Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course. And I'm your host, Matt Wickham. In this episode, we discuss how local communities in Ukraine are overcoming the consequences of Russian war crimes. If you want to learn more about this subject, please continue watching this video and don't forget to press subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our videos in the future. Our first guest of this episode, Shcherbatiuk, head of the Cherkasy Human Rights Center, NGO, tells of the importance of talking about Russia's war crimes and the colossal damage it has left behind, which Ukraine has had to spend millions on, opposed to what could have been a period of growth and prosperity if it wasn't for Russia's war. Let's take a listen.
Stress that in the framework of implementation of this project, we already found out more than 1,200,000,000 hryvnias of losses that were caused due to international crimes on the territory of Ukraine to different territorial communities. That's a huge amount. And when we were working on that, when we were trying to find out the amount, and when we were looking at where the money is spent, and actually the money is spent to cope with the consequences of the international crimes committed, we saw that the money is taken from educational field, medicine, social sphere. That is, we do understand that Russian Federation, by its crimes, is trying to kind of return us a few dozens of years ago, and that at the cost of this money, we could have had certain development. The other number that we found out, on the level of 9 territorial communities, more than 500 persons were killed. More than 500 were injured. If we are talking about destroyed housing, it's approximately 1,500 of residential premises. If we are talking about the damage to houses, more than 5,000 objects of residential objects. In addition to that, business objects were destroyed, transport was destroyed, other property of the citizens of territorial communities was destroyed. The losses caused by Russian Federation are just of colossal number, and we have to talk about that all the time. And our today's event actually is dedicated to this, so that one extra time we can focus on what kind of losses are caused on the territory of territorial communities, to the citizens themselves and to territorial communities. And in the framework of this project, I would say straight away that it's kind of a first stage of our work with territorial communities. So when we were finding out what types of losses are there and how we should work with those.
Tetyana Novyk, head of the Department of Economics and Social Protection at the Semenivka City Council in the Chernihiv Oblast, highlights the severe challenges faced by agricultural enterprises due to safety concerns. Many are forced to cease operations, leading to widespread closures and significant economic harm in the oblast. Let's take a listen.
Taking into account safety situation, most of our agricultural enterprises has no opportunity to work on agricultural activity. We are one of the communities in the oblast who used to develop small and medium enterprises in agrarian sector. So a lot of people are leaving, a lot of enterprises are being closed, and officially they don't work. From our side, as the local self-government, we are trying to meet their needs, and we give some benefits to our entrepreneurs for taxes and fees. in turn, of course, the budget isn't getting much enough, and there is some damage, and we cannot fully help our citizens due to the fact that we face destructions every day, because every day, I guess there was no such a day when we would have no shellings. So due to the safety situation, we can say how much and what kind of losses did we get, what kind of losses we are going to get, but still the citizens stay. They live here, they work here, and we truly hope that one day that will end. We will rebuild, we will help it recover, and we will improve the life in our community and in Ukraine in general.
Hanna Khrystova, head of the Council of Europe project strengthening judicial and non-judicial remedies for victims of war in Ukraine, discusses the significance of the international registry involving 43 participant states as the initial phase in supporting communities, and talks about the citizens who have endured unimaginable torture, violence, and the Russian occupation. Let's listen in full.
International registry of losses that we were talking of today many times already. First of all, there are a few very important points that we need to address to our communities, and it is very important that, as you're saying, you start this work here and now, because the International Registry of Losses that was created under the Council of Europe, as for today, these are 43 states that actually are participants of the registry. In addition to that, the European Union has already submitted the first category of claims. And that is the first message, the first step towards working with communities, towards working with the citizens who suffered. And we can start that here and now. Because during your messages for each of the oblasts, we already heard about the amount of the destroyed houses, and that is that very first category. And we are talking about the housing, about the houses of private persons who suffered. That means that the first bridge between your researches and the further steps, we can do that already now. Then, very important point regarding the fact that these days, at the end of the second quarter of 2024, the Council of the Registry is working on finalizing the next block of categories. We are expecting for submission for opening the next 12 categories that will include IDPs. You were mentioning them today, and probably that will include those natural persons and families where their relatives died due to armed aggression. The same about those who are gone missing in special circumstances, and then a whole range of categories related to the damaged housing and non-residential real estate for the communities. That is, it's a huge part of our joint work. Now the key question about the assessment. It's very important to communicate to communities that the Registry of Losses, the task office, is together with the survivors. And actually, you're gonna go to them and the experts will come to them to collect and to accumulate losses caused by Russian Federation. At the same time, the registry itself, which is the first stage of compensation mechanism, will not check the assessment and will not conduct the assessment. That will be the task of the future compensation committee. And as of today, the work on it is very active by the registry and the government of Ukraine. And of course, all of us are following actively the dynamics around compensation of Russian assets. I mean, those negotiations and dialogues that are being held. And of course, well, you know, the key and the end step will become the creation of compensation mechanisms, which will become the source for paying compensations, but the whole mechanism will work at the time when, at the very beginning, we will make the right steps. This is about the assessment, which claimants, the claimants and representatives of the community, they have to submit that to those claims about the damage and destroyed property and other immovable property. A few more moments, you raise the issue, that is, these are the categories that are going to be considered in the nearest time, and we have a lot of work waiting for us in the future. In total, the registry has offered up to 45 categories as of today that in general will be open for submission, and correspondingly they will open up in groups. And, not first of all, but also in the queue, there are categories concerning ecological damage, damage to environment, categories concerning cultural heritage, historical heritage. A separate category is a category of expenditures related to demining. Then they have that in Group B. And what is very important is the issue which was mentioned by you today multiple times. You mentioned that indirect expenditures that went for recovery, and they wouldn't have been spent by the communities if not for the armed aggression. But it's very important that the registry itself in the list has provision for and used humanitarian expenditures in order to cope with the consequences of aggression, and these humanitarian support is about the B category, it's by the state and local authorities, etc., and category C, where it says about business. That is what we understand when we have it in more detail, like these humanitarian submission after the form is developed. But the very approach, what is important here and now, the approach itself is fully corresponding to those international processes and correspondingly the position of the registry that we already have. And I would like to end by the thing that is very important. We need to understand the complexity of moral damage and the general approach which was dictated by the theories of national, international right. Of course, the whole country has suffered. Of course, everyone lived through suffering and some disorders and some worries. Well, actually, that's happening every day. But what is very important that the compensation within international compensation mechanism, just the damage of certain level. And as a rule, it means the following, that the moral damage is that compensation, like the compensation payment is covering the moral damage that a person survived as a consequence of suffering, death of their loved ones, people who are gone missing, tortures, captivity that they survived, sexual violence related to conflict, and other numerous categories that the registry has determined as the categories of natural persons, survivors, that will open up for submission step by step. And you are mentioning the hardest numbers of those who died, of those who were tortured, of those who became people with disability and they had hard physical injuries.
You've been watching the special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find more information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you found our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!